So because we talk so much about digestion on this channel, I hear from a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I'm having that digestive symptom because my vagus nerve is busted. Or they'll say, oh, I have to really do some type of vagal stimulation exercises to fix my motility issue. So I just wanted to make this video to help you understand that your vagus nerve is not broken. Like, you don't need to go to a garage sale and get a new vagus nerve. So when there's something going wrong there are usually underlying causes that are restricting the vagus nerve from working correctly. So there just seems to be a lot of confusion about this, and maybe as people don't know, should I say vagus nerve or vagus nerve? And I don't know. But in this video, we're going to go over 6 different underlying causes that can restrict this vagus nerve from working correctly. We're going to go over some studies, and I'll put the links to these studies in the description below. It's okay if I stand in front of them. We're going to make them big so you can see them when we need to. But I just want to kind of go through and help people understand what's going wrong here. So this vagus nerve comes down from both sides of our brainstem, and then it kind of meets in the middle and goes through our diaphragm with the esophagus. And it's in charge of a lot of our parasympathetic signaling of our autonomic nervous system. So our autonomic nervous system has 2 sides, has this sympathetic fight or flight side, and then it has the parasympathetic rest and digest side. So this autonomic nervous system controls a lot of the functions in the body that just kind of go on without us thinking about them. Like, it can control, digestion and heart rate and breathing and reproductive functions. Like, we don't need to think about those things happening, they just sort of happen. But this vagus nerve is in charge of a lot of the signaling that goes on with there. So if there's problems, then that signaling doesn't happen. So the body can say, like, hey, let's just digest this food. And then the body's like, nah, let's just have it sit there in their stomach like a rock for 6 hours instead. So we want to understand things that can be going wrong here. So first, let's just kind of knock out these first 2, because there can be structural problems. Maybe somebody has problems with their posture, where they're having this neck forward, they're in their phone, texting all day long. That can create some trouble. Or maybe someone has like a whiplash injury. Something here can kind of pinch off that nerve, and when a nerve is pinched off, now those signals aren't traveling. Think of it like, a hose that gets kinked off, and now the water's on, but there's no water coming out and your lawn is sad. So this can be a similar situation, and with this kind of problem, a chiropractor could be very helpful in helping you figure out, is this a problem, or helping you figure out that trouble and how to solve it. Or fixing some posture problems could also create improvement there. And the other structural thing I just want to talk about is some type of pinch that can happen in that diaphragm when it's passing through the diaphragm with that esophagus there. So some people can have what's called a hiatal hernia, where part of the stomach is kind of pulled up through the diaphragm. This kind of tears a little bit, and now part of the stomach gets pulled up through there. So now when they eat, or when other issues are causing bloating, this kind of expands and pushes out and can really pinch that vagus nerve as it's coming down through the diaphragm as well. So fixing some type of hiatal hernia issue could also create a lot of improvement. I'm not going to dig too far into this, but I had a hiatal hernia, and I'll put a link in the description below for our video on how to fix a hiatal hernia, and that can walk you through figuring out steps that could help that scenario. But this third issue is really the override switch, and this is probably the biggest cause for trouble with most people who feel like they're having problems with their vagus nerve. And what we want to understand is that when we are stressed, or the body is stressed, it moves into the sympathetic side of that autonomic nervous system. This is the fight or flight side. So in that scenario, the body changes how it's operating in an effort to optimize for survival. So when we're being chased by a lion, the body changes how it works. I'm going to change how this glucose works. I'm going to make it so that you can really run away from this lion and survive. But the problem is that in nature, most emergencies last about 4 minutes. Like, in 4 minutes, you're either going to get away from that lion or you're going to be lunch. But in our world, we're stressed for 4 months. We're just stressed constantly. And the body doesn't understand that we're stressed because our boss is a jerk. It views this stress as an emergency, and it changes how that body operates. So we'll look at this study here on resting vagal tone and vagal response to stress, associations with anxiety, aggression, and perceived anxiety. And they found that when people were in a chronic state of stress or anxiety, that vagal nerve didn't have the ability to respond back to that calm situation as well as someone else might. So we kind of get locked into this stress state. So this isn't a problem where your vagus nerve is not working correctly. The vagus nerve is working correctly. It's responding the way the body is intended to respond. There isn't a scenario in nature where the body would need to optimize for survival and digestion at the same time. You're not going to run away from a lion and eat a cheeseburger at the same time. It's never going to happen. You're not going to find yourself wrestling a crocodile and needing to reproduce at the same time. That would not be attractive children. So the body is optimizing for what it views as the most important situation, which is survival. So it makes sense that when the body is stressed or the person is stressed, the body is going to turn off these systems that are made for resting and digesting, and it's going to prioritize, I gotta survive. So when a person is really freaking out and stressed all the time, they're not going to be able to move into that parasympathetic state where the vagus nerve can be activated and do the job that it's supposed to do. So a person doesn't need to do vagal exercises or do some kind of, I'm going to shock my vagus nerve into working correctly. They just need to simmer the fudge down, reduce the stress in your life. But a person may not have a lot of stress in their life, but they can have a stress in their body because the body is dealing with some type of invader or a lack of resources. So there's different angles that stress can come from, but if you're stressed in your life, you got to find ways to reduce that to allow this system to work the way that it's supposed to. So a lot of these vagal stimulation exercises that people do or they tell you to do really can just calm me down. Well, let's do some slow breathing. Let's do deep breathing. Let's take some meditation. Let's do things that just pull you out of this fight or flight state and allow the body to move into the parasympathetic state like it should. And a lot of people, it's very popular now to use these vagal stimulation devices where you're kind of sending this electrical pulse to the body where it kind of jolts the vagus nerve. Like, come on, let's get going. And then the vagus nerve kind of gets activated and it can do some of the jobs it's supposed to do. And some of these stimulators really work. They really can be effective, but it's kind of like you're running around jumping your car to start everywhere you go, you know, and then eventually you might want to say, hey, I guess I should just get a new battery and then I don't need to jump start my car anymore. But the vagus nerve stimulator that I have used, it was called Vagal Stim. I'll put links to anything that I talk about in the description below along with any discount codes that we have. But with the thousands of people that I have helped fix their digestion, I've used these vagal stimulators with probably 3. And what they can do is they can kind of allow the body to force into that parasympathetic state, and a lot of the digestive issues that we have start off by not having enough stomach acid. This stomach acid triggers a lot of these other hormones and a lot of these other activities and a lot of this motility and all these things into action. But if that stomach acid isn't there, that first hammer doesn't drop and a lot of these other systems start to fall apart as well. So remember that we need to be in that parasympathetic state to be able to produce that hydrochloric acid in the stomach. So if a stimulator can kind of push your body into that parasympathetic state and allow you to start producing some stomach acid, you could actually fix a lot of your digestive issues that way. The problem is a lot of people have other things that are restricting that stomach acid function. They may not have enough resources. The body needs like the chloride and zinc and these other nutrients to make that hydrochloric acid. So if a person is missing these nutrients and they're just trying to zap themselves all day, they might just kind of be electrocuting themselves for no reason. If a person has a digestive overgrowth in their stomach that's neutralizing these acids, then electrical stimulation isn't going to improve that either. So there's other things we want to think about, but if a person is really stressed, these stimulators really can help pull the body out of that state. They may just need to do this, more than once a day until they can figure out how to calm down or maybe get their digestion jump started. We just usually use other methods to kind of get the digestion working. If you don't know how to do that, if you're new to this channel, we'll have a link in the description below to our totally free digestion course. and that'll kind of walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and steps you can take to improve those. But a lot of these stimulation things have the ability to help a lot of other health issues. There's a lot of studies showing that these, vagus stim type stimulators can reduce inflammation and things like depression and a lot of things that we see occur when there's not enough minerals in the system for signals to travel correctly. Then these stimulators kind of come in and electricity help those signals travel a little bit better, and then we can let these systems work a little bit more. I'll try to make a video about who should or shouldn't use vagal stimulation products, but they're not too expensive. You can usually get one for a few $100s, and for some people it could really be beneficial. I just don't view this as the answer. The answer is to fix the actual underlying causes instead of just electrocuting yourself all the time. So another problem we want to think about is this sugar short circuit. And we see a lot of problems with this vagus nerve and a lot of these systems with type 2 diabetics or people that are leaning insulin resistant and have consistent high blood sugar. So we'll look at this study here on advanced glycation in products and diabetic complications. And I talked a little bit about this study in our video about neuropathy, and it kind of helped us understand that when sugar is too high, we can have these glycation problems where sugar kind of connects to these proteins and fats in the body, and then it kind of destroys their ability to function correctly. So when we have these myelin sheath protective coatings over our nerves, but we get a sugar connected to those myelin sheaths, now the body's going to be like, oh man, I got a glycated protein here, I'm going to clean this up, and the immune system comes and breaks all that down, but when it does, it breaks down that coating. So now this nerve is like a wire without that protective coating on it, and it can make signals misfire or create troubles like that. So we see a lot of issues with sugar, but if a person has high blood sugar, they can take steps to bring that down. Now keep in mind that I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving you any medical advice. I'm basically a professional stand-up comic turned nutrition author, because when I lost my voice for 8 years and 23 different doctors couldn't help me figure that out, I had to dig for my own answers. So now for 20 years, I've been teaching health professionals how to help their clients fix the actual underlying causes of problems instead of just covering up the symptoms. So I'm not giving you medical advice, but we'll put these links to these studies below where you can dig into this and understand the right questions to ask your doctor. But if blood sugar is a problem, that has to be corrected. I'll put links below for our video on improving insulin resistance if you need to check that out. The fifth issue can be problems from invaders or some type of infection and some type of issue like maybe somebody has Lyme's disease, some type of mold illness or bacterial overgrowth or some type of invader that's taking a lot of the body's resources that deal with this invader. That can also add stress to the body. That's a stress to the body to have to deal with this invader in the body. So that has the ability to create some trouble with this vagal function. And the last thing I want to talk about is oxygen utilization issues. And we'll look at this study here on insulin sensitivity index, potentially linked to carbon isotopes of breath, CO2. And they say individuals with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes accordingly produce less amount of CO2 in the exhaled breath samples compared to normal. So I've talked about this in other videos, but when the body is making less CO2, now that blood will lean more alkaline. And what's called the Bohr effect kicks in, and now the blood holds on to that oxygen and doesn't allow it to get down to the tissues where it needs to be to function correctly. And guess what our nerves need to function correctly? It's oxygen. So this is a really big deal, and it's really easy to kind of get an idea if this is a problem for you at home. You can just check your phone and do a minute timer on there, and then just relax and try to breathe normal and just count the number of inhales you take in 60 seconds. Not inhale 1, exhale 2, just count the inhales. And if that breath rate is lower than 12, that's a sign that you may be leaning a little bit too far on that alkaline side in your bloodstream, and your body's not allowing oxygen to get down to the tissues where it needs to be. That's why a lot of people will say do these slow breathing, deep breathing exercises, because that allows the body to hold on to more CO2, acidify that bloodstream a little bit more, and then allow oxygen to get down to where it needs to be. But if a person can just help the body process carbohydrates correctly, then they would create more CO2, balance out that imbalance, and allow oxygen to work the right way. I'm not going to dig too far into that. I'll have a link in the description below for our video on improving oxygen utilization issues. But if you look at that and you test and your breath rate is like 7, well, you know, that's a really big part of what is likely going wrong with you. So to recap, if we feel like we're having vagus nerve problems, we want to make sure that there's not some kind of structural issue or hiatal hernia that's pinching things off. We might need to simmer the fudge down, and we might need to put the fudge down. Step away from the pie. If you're having high blood sugar issues, you might have to stop eating like an 8th grader. You might have to eat like a grown-up and eat some real food that allows these blood sugars to come down and fix this problem. If there's an invader or some type of infection in the body, you can take steps to improve that scenario. And if your body's having problems using oxygen correctly, then correcting that can really help this vagus function. So I hope that helps you understand some ways to fix the actual underlying causes of problems that can create trouble for the vagus nerve. And that doesn't mean I'm against the vagus nerve stimulators. I use them myself sometimes if I'm really stressed. And if somebody wanted to use one, like especially before they ate, to try to help the body move into a parasympathetic state, to help them digest, that can be really helpful while you're working to fix the actual underlying causes of these problems. So right now, if you feel like you might have this low breath rate problem, you can jump over and check out our video on how to improve oxygen utilization issues. I can't wait to hear about your results.